Okay, so what we're going to learn today will be how to write the methods, how to capture user input, how to work with local components, and how to work with game objects. All right. So to start with, we're going to look at how identify the anatomy of a method. Okay. So keep in mind that a method used in C# or in object-oriented programming. In particular here, we're going to be using it with C#. Okay, but basically a method. So methods are basically modules of code that can be called and used independently of each other. What we'll be doing is we will be creating these methods and then calling them up when we need them. And we've kind of worked already with a few methods here and there, and we'll see what I'm talking about in a few seconds. So let's first create a C# file, which we're going to use a C# file because we're using Unity. So Unity uses a C# file. All right, so let's go ahead and first create a folder, and we'll call it a script folder. So we'll organize all our scripts in there. Double click that, and from within the folder, I'll right mouse click and I'll select create C# script. So we don't want to leave it with the default name, and so we'll start with we'll call it player health. Okay, so we'll player cut. We'll call it player damage. So this will be a script that theoretically will calculate how much damage a player has taken. Okay. All right, as you can see, we can see a little, once we have the script selected here or created and it's selected, we see a little preview of the script. Okay, so in order to work on it though, besides just looking at it, we need to double click on it to open up Visual Studio. So we'll double click on it. Okay. Hold on a second. I should make sure this is the correct script here. There's two of them showed up. Interesting. Anyway, so here it is. As you can tell, there was two scripts that showed up. The correct one is this one right here. So I closed them out and I double click just on this one because, as you can see here, it says array and the name of the Unity file, and then here is the name of the script. And as you can see, the name here matches the class name. So here is the class, and then we already have a built-in two methods or functions. Okay, so we won't go into the anatomy of these, but we'll create another one and go into it. But just know that as you see it right here, this is one type of method that's already part of the Unity library, and we're able to use that because of this that's already typed in for us. Okay, when we open up the new file, so it's basically a template. This whole thing right here is a template when we create a Unity file or a C# file through Unity. Okay, if we didn't create it through Unity, this right here wouldn't be there, and then it'll be totally different. Okay, Okay, so let's go ahead and create our method that we want to look at, kind of break it down. So to start with, I'll type in int, and I'll explain what that is in a minute. Take damage, parentheses, open and close, and then we'll go ahead and press return, open curly brace, and hit return there. All right, so I'll go ahead and type in here int damage amount, and then int health equals 100, oops, semicolon, and then return health minus damage. Let's put a damage amount, which is up here already, and then semicolon. Okay, so let's look at this as it's been written. So as I said before, I'm going to explain this. So the int basically is what the return type is going to be. So if you'll notice here in this method, the void is the return type, which means that it's not going to give any return. The void means nothing, no. Okay. So in this case, but we are going to have a return type of integer. So that's what we wrote on here to tell it that we want a return of a number. Okay, so a whole number or negative number. And then we have take damage, which is the name of the script itself. And then we always type in the parentheses, right? And then within the parentheses, we have a parameter. Okay, so within this parameter, we have another, we wrote in again to basically make sure that we tell it what type of parameter we want to have. It's going to be another number, and then a variable name for that number. Okay, so this could be, it could be, you could call it whatever you want. Same here in terms of the name of the method, but you want it to be something relevant, something that makes sense when you're going to call that method. Okay. Then we've kind of defined within the block. Okay, so this is the methods block. So when I click here, notice when I click in front of the first left curly brace that this is highlighted. And then as we can see, we have, we wanted to do something within that block. Okay, so when we call that method up, take damage, and then we pass a parameter, write the parameter in there, we put a number in there, which then this number will be used here, as you can see, and then health is equal to 100. We made it, again, integer. So we made this, we gave it a variable name. So now we're going to return that number. All right, so which will be health, 100 minus whatever. We put that number in there. So that's the idea in terms of this parameter. Okay. Let's see what else here. So basically, when it gives you when you wanted it to return, it's going to return a integer. All right. And as you can see, there's only one parameter. So again, this this is the again what what type of parameter it is, and this is the name of it. So it's just going to return one, or you're going to pass one number on there. And then again, this is what we wanted to do. It's going to figure out the points for that health. Okay, so that's in a nutshell a little bit of breakdown of the anatomy of a method. Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll start writing. We'll start creating a method here that we can use. You know, I'll go ahead and take. We'll kind of modify this. There's again, keep in mind that when you write these methods, in this case, I'll go ahead and as I said before, you want the method to have a unique name, and when you can, so when you give it a unique name, it becomes a unique method. But you can also what they call overload a method, which basically means that it'll have the same name, but then if you keep changing the parameter, it becomes a unique method. Okay, so sort of like this is a unique method and this is a unique method, right? This does one thing, this does another thing. As you can see, here's a kind of like an explanation of what it does. Remember, this is commented out, meaning it won't be part of the script itself. It's a comment on there. But as we can see here, let's start. Let me go ahead and get rid of this and just to start from the beginning a little bit here. Okay. So, so again, this is one particular type of method right here. All right. So I went ahead and got rid of this. So if we wanted to, and this we will, let me get rid of this too. And we'll kind of start this one from the beginning just to get a better idea. Okay, so I'll go ahead and type in int. Okay, so you'll see how we'll define these different type of methods. So what we're going to start off with here is basically saying that the player's health is 100 points. Okay, all right. Then we want to we'll go and since we have a return of an integer, we'll write in return. And it doesn't have to be an int, it could be a float, which is a mixed number basically. And then we wanted to give us, give us a number return number. So basically, what should happen here is that in terms of the player's health is set to 100 points. And we use it again here. We call that variable minus 5. So theoretically, if we were to launch this, and we still need to do some more work on it, it should give us 95 points for the player's health, or the damage. Okay. All right. So let's continue on. All right. So what we're going to do here is now modify this. So I'll go ahead and just copy it. Okay. And we're basically going to modify it. We're going to, as we were doing before, we're going to make it different. Or as I said before, we're going to create like an overload of this method. So we're going to make it different just by adding a parameter. So we're going to, and then we have to define again, well, what type of parameter is going to be. So it's a number integer. So this time we're going to define what that damage is. So instead of just saying it's a fixed number of 5, we're just, we're going to kind of like, so it could be 5, 10, 20 or something like that. We can pass different numbers on there, okay, and the parameter. All right, so instead of 5 here, we'll go ahead and just type in damage. All right, so now it's a variable, so again, the number can vary, right? All right. And then we'll do it one more different way. And so we'll look at, in terms of just not having even this defined within that in there. So we'll define it within the parameter. So I'll go ahead and copy that. Turn, paste it. All right, so now we'll get rid of this from right here. So actually we'll just cut this out. And then we'll add it in our parameters. But what we need to do is make sure that we separate it with a comma. And then we need to get rid of this right here, okay? Because we're not defining it within the block of the method. So, oops, too far. Okay. All right. Notice we don't get any more of the curly little red lines indicating there's an error. So because now we have defined, or in terms of the variable that we're going to pass on here, and then also here. So we've basically defined our methods. So we have 1, 2, 3 different methods. So now you could do as we're doing here. Sometimes it's better to just even rename these, maybe like take damage 2, take damage 3, just so that it makes a little bit more sense for you, in terms of being able to understand it better and not confuse it. But just to understand the concept of overloading and how it'll work, we'll go ahead and leave it like that. Okay, so what we're going to do is then now, so we'll work with what we got here, okay? And so as you can see, by the way, when we've defined these method, what's important to understand is that we placed it within the class, okay? Within the class right here, and not within the blocks of this method. So again, this is a method and this is a method. So they're not defined within this same method. Okay, and we shouldn't do that because this particular method, we've already said that we don't want it to return anything, right? And then so if we place that in there, it's gonna give us a bunch of problems. All right, so but I want to make sure you understand what's going on here. So so here's the class itself, and here's the blocks class. So here's the curly brace, and you'll notice I put my cursor on in front of that curly brace, and notice that it highlights it down at the bottom. Okay, so it's within the class, but not within these other methods that's already created through the template. Okay, but we will use those start methods in a few seconds. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to let's call on the first method. All right, so what we need to do in this first, in the start, we'll type this in within the start. Yeah, we'll type this in within the start method. Okay, so we're going to type in int equals x. So it's a variable to capture that, equals, then we'll call it, and then we'll call up that method. So as you notice, when I start typing in take, it shows up right here. And then so we'll go ahead and double click it. And to make sure that it's that it's calling the method. Notice it's giving me that red squiggly line underneath it because it's incomplete. I'm going to put parentheses and then close it off with a semicolon. Okay. So basically, I've called this method, and we know that's going to return, an integer. Okay, and we're using return, and it's going to give us some number right here, right? Most likely 95, if we did this correctly. All right, so we've already written up. So we told it to do that, right? And so that we call this method up. It'll do what we're asking it to do in here, and then it's going to capture that result in the x value. Okay, so now we want to display that in our console. So we'll type in print semicolon, make sure we close it off, and then there we'll go ahead and I'll type in player. Oops, let's put a quote, 2 quotes, because it's going to be a comment. And this could be anything within there. So, player health is, and then I'm going to put a space right there, so the number will go in there. And then still within the parentheses, I'll put a space right here. I'm going to put a plus sign, which means we're going to concatenate. Means we're going to put together this comment or this text with the results here, with the x variable result. So I'm going to type in x, lowercase x. Okay. So there is our x variable within our start block. So what should happen is that when we run the script, we should get within the console saying player health is, and then this will show up right next to it. Okay, and again, this plus means not that we're adding any numbers, but is going to put the text and that variable together to display. All right. Okay. So let's go ahead and save it. I'll save it, and then I'll build it. So you may want to hit Control B if you're, or Shift Control B if you're in Windows, and Command B if you're in a Mac. Okay. All right. To build your script. Again, when you build your script, it saves it, and it checks for any errors. And you notice we didn't get any errors down here. All right. So I'm going to switch over toggle back to Unity. Okay. So here I'm going back to Unity. Now, I need to put the script somewhere on some game object. It's not on any game object right now. I created it. If I run this script, notice that nothing shows up in the console. Okay, or if I run Unity, nothing shows up in the console. So I will go ahead and, for now, just add it to the main camera, and you'll notice the script is down at the bottom right here. All right, so let's run Unity and see what happens. So Command P or Control P, and you'll notice player health is 95. As you can see, as I said before, that's the return value for that particular method that we just created. All right, so I will stop play. I'll I use the shortcut to do command to stop it. I can click on the play button. The reason I'm getting this blue is because I set it, all around this, because I set it so I can see in my preference when I go into the play mode that I know I'm in the play mode. All right. Okay, so let's go back and modify a little bit this more. Oh, actually, yeah, we'll modify the script some more. All right, so now we'll look on using the second method right here. Okay. All right, so I will go ahead and hit return a couple of times. Scroll down here, and basically, I'll just go ahead and copy this. And change a few things. Okay, so don't want to call up the define the same variable, so I'll go ahead and change it to y. And then since I'm calling the second method, okay, so which is right here, notice that there we have to pass a number in the parameter. All right, so I will type in 25. Okay, and then this will pretty much stay the same, except I'll just go and player health. Player health is, well, yeah, I guess we'll leave it at that. Or let's do the second method. Okay, player health is, and then we should get a number on there. So basically, by passing a parameter there, so now, so as you can see, we put 25 here. So what should happen is that here's a player health 100 still, and then so this will get replaced by 100 minus whatever we put in here, which is in this case 25. So it should equal out to 75. All right, so notice right here, this little circle means has not been saved. I haven't built it yet. So I will build it. I'll use my shortcut to build it. And notice it built successful. Now, that's what it said before, but this is for the new one. And notice there's an X, meaning that we've saved it. It saved it also. So those two things at the same time. Okay, so let's go back. Oh, I just noticed an error right here. I have, well, let's see, error on my part, not a script error, but here's, it says integer y, and we need to change this to y. Okay, or else it'll take that number that and use it in here, which would be interesting. Okay, I'm gonna save it again, or build it again just to make sure. All right, no problem there. Okay, let's go back and let's run it again. And then see, as it says, notice it says second method player's health is 75 points, which is what we thought it should be. Okay. All right, let's go ahead and use our third method. Alrighty, so we're going to call up, as we called up the method here, we're going to call up the third method again. We'll just basically copy and paste this. Paste it there. And so for the third method, remember for the parameter, we have two numbers. Okay, so instead of here, the second method already had within the block that number was defined, right? And so what we'll do is we'll just change this to third method, player health is, and then X, Y, and then we'll go Z, and Z here. Okay, because we want to capture that. We're calling that method. It again. We got to do the second or the first parameter, which is the player's health. Okay, we're gonna put a number there. All right, so we'll put let's see here, put 100, comma, and instead of 25, so we want to get the same answer, let's say 40. Okay. All right, so now we have, so it should be is 100 players. Here we have is a player's health 100, or yeah, 100 minus 40. So it should be 60, right? So let's check here. So integer z. So this is going to, whatever the return of this is for this method, or whatever the return value is, which should be 60. It will, be captured in this variable name z, which we'll use here. So then we're telling it to print, or basically display, this text plus the results of whatever we've typed in within this parameter. So we can change this anytime and it'll show up. Okay, so I'll go ahead and build it, Command B, and then we'll go into Unity again, and notice we do get 60. Third method, player health, is 60. And I just noticed this whole time I've been misspelling health. I've been spelling Heath, brother. Okay, no problem. We'll change that. Not that it really matters, but whatever. Health, or it should matter. Health. Okay, let's do it again. There we go. Player health is second method, player's health. Anyway, you guys get it. Okay. All right. Now let's look at one of our other objective, which is, or start our other objective, which is in terms of input. Okay, so before we get into that, so basically the player's input, we want to look at, how we can capture the player's input and use that, right, to maybe move a game object or destroy a game or a player or whatever, that kind of thing, right? Okay, so let's do that. But first, what we want to make you aware of is what are some of the ways that some of the player input that we're going to use. So let's go ahead and look at this, some of the input basics that are built in within Unity. All right, so I'm going to go to Edit, and then scroll down to Project Settings, and then I'm going to select Input, and I'm going to select Axis, Input Manager, Axis, and then you'll notice, so in terms of moving it horizontal, you'll notice that the name that it's going to be used is horizontal, so we're going to use this within our script. So we have to make sure that we spell it correctly, horizontal, okay? As you can see here, on a mouse button, if we want to use the negative button, or if we want to use the button, so the left button, we have to spell it out in terms of left. If we want to use the right button, and so on. Okay, and here are Alt or WAS keys, as you can see. A or so A going to move it to the left, and D is going to move it to the right, or positive positive button. Okay, so notice in the vertical, again, uppercase V, and make sure you spell vertical correctly, and moving it down, negative is, or the negative button is, you have to spell down or up, or the SW keys. Again, going back to the WAS keys, right? So W going up, A going left, S going down, D going right. All right, so this is where we get those shortcuts and in terms of the name for the horizontal and vertical input. All right, and then you have, again, to fire, and then the different buttons for that if you are looking, to use for fire 1 or fire 2 and so on. Okay. All right, so they're all in there. All righty, so let's keep that in mind. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and write some script. And we could go ahead and create a new project if we wanted to, but I'll just go ahead and well, actually, let's go ahead and just go ahead and create it. I was going to continue on with this same script, but just to make it a little more simple, we'll go ahead and create a new script. So we'll create a new script. Keep in mind we're going to keep it within our script folder here. So a new C# script, and we'll call it player input. Okay. Alrighty, so let's go ahead and again, we'll just double click it. And here's our player input script, as you can see right here. And right in here, you know that everything should be okay because the name matches the class right here. All right, so what we want to do here, but we'll create the script to give us a variable number, but we making sure that we're using the correct input before we actually try to use it to move something. So we want to put it in the update method because it's going to be reading, it's going to be calling this, it's going to be calling it up, checking it to see if it's, if there's an input, if the player is inputting anything, whether it's keys or mouse movement or something like that, right? So we need to make sure, as you can see, the update method checks or runs the script once per every frame. So that means it's going to run it, if it's set at 60 frames per second, which is what Unity is set up to be, it's going to run it 60 times, okay, this particular method. Or whatever we put within the block of this method. Okay, so to start with, what we want to do is tell it, or what type. We're going to tell it what type of variable we want. So it's going to start with float, meaning that it's going to be a, basically it's going to be a mixed number, right? So it'd be negative, positive. So it's a fractional number, so it could be 7.35, whatever, something like that, right? Or negative 6.32, and so on, right? And we want to give it a variable name. So we want to capture the horizontal method. All right, so or horizontal movement. Sorry. So we're going to capture the horizontal. All right. So the horizontal. So we're giving to capture that horizontal value. We've told it what type of number, and then we gave it an instance name. And then to do that, we're going to start with the input method. So input, so it's going to capture the input, and then we want to get the axis. So notice our little helper here is coming up as we start typing. Also get access, and we'll make sure open and close parentheses. And then we got to create a string name. So I'm going to put quotes in there. And then the string name that we're going to call up is horizontal, as we saw earlier in our input dialog box in Unity, and then close it off. All right, so then we're going to capture, we want to capture now the vertical. Vertical. And by the way, I'm just spelling it out. You could have written just V and then val for value. All right, so equals. So input dot get access, open and close, semicolon, and then quotes, and then we're going to type in vertical. Okay, so again, if you misspell this, for example, something like that, it's not going to capture that vertical movement. Okay, so we need to make sure that's spelled correctly as it was spelled in our input dialog box within Unity. All right, so, okay, so if you type that in. Now, in order to capture it, so let's go ahead and type in, so we need to see if it's moving, so this is just basically what we've done is just, once we do something, then it's going to take that, once there's an input of some sort, then it's going to put that number, it's going to give it a sign, the return here is going to come into this particular variable. It's going to be assigned this variable, okay? All right, so let's go in here and then type in if, open and close parentheses. Now, just out of habit, I'm just going to put open and close method. If it's one line long, you don't have to do open and close curly brace, but, it's a good habit to get into. So, print, and then semicolon to close it off. So here, we'll type in to create our string or text to display. So this doesn't matter what's written in there. We can misspell it and it doesn't matter because it's just a string, right? It's going to be displayed. So just to remind us what this is about. Okay, so then we'll concatenate it with the value that's captured here. Okay, so now whenever we do inputters one way or the other, whether we go up or down, then it'll be that value, like 1.3 or what 2.3 or whatever, or negative whatever, it'll be captured and it'll be displayed. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and copy this, paste it. Oops, actually forgot something here. Forgot to do the parameters here on our if statement. So why if? Well, if we move it this or that, or one way or the other, then if the value changes, then we want it to do this, print that value. So if it notices that it's moved horizontally one way or another, okay, so we want it to be not equal to 0. So basically, put a little space there. So basically, if we note if there's an input and that value is other than 0, right? Not 0, not equal to 0, then do this. Then display it. Take that number or this number, or actually this number, and then display it right here. Okay. All right. All right. So now we'll do for. Let me get rid of that space there. Too far. Okay, semicolon. So I'll just go ahead and copy this. Now notice I'm copying it and I'm staying within these curly braces right here. Okay. So I'm going to hit return. So I'm put my cursor right here, hit return a couple times, and then I'm going to paste what I just copied there. All right, you see that? So now instead of horizontal, I'm going to type in vertical value. So the vertical value, whatever, if the vertical value is other than 0, so negative or positive, up or down, then vertical movement selected is, and then it'll display this number and it'll add it to this string text because we're concatenating it. Okay, oops, I'm going to change this to, oops. All right. Okay, so make sure you make those changes if you copy and paste it, or just type it in from the beginning. Again, we haven't saved it. We can see that little circle there. I'm going to build my script. All right, so it's no errors. All right, it's saved. So I'm going to jump back into Unity. Now, I'll go ahead and put that script on the main camera. Now, remember, I could put this on a cube or whatever, some other object to just run it. All right, but remember we have this right here going on, right? And so I did that. So let me go to the main camera and let's see what scripts I have. So I have the player damage, which I don't need right now. I could just remove it completely, or just uncheck. I'll just uncheck it for now. Let me go back to using it again. So it shouldn't display any of this. It should display what we had in what we typed in this particular script, player input. Okay, because that's what we have right here. So let me go ahead and run it. Command return. Okay. All right, so let's run it now in Unity. Oh, before we do that, check the main camera here, make sure that okay, so I will click on the, oh, first I want to make sure I'm in the game area. By clicking here, I'm going to click the up arrow key, so it should show vertical, and there's the vertical numbers. Notice there's 45 created, right? It's, slight press down, it's going to show those numbers. I'm going to press down now. Okay. Now I'm going to do left key, left key. Make sure again, click here, and then as you can see, horizontal. Make sure to click there, and let's do down key. And notice it increases the number, and you see it's vertical, negative numbers there. Make sure I click here, so I'm going to go right, the right key. Notice this is increasing in terms of the number of comments. Here is the horizontal number. I'm going to go left key, notice negative numbers. Okay? Alrighty. Oh, we can use also, just to try it out, the WAS key, the A key. So I'll go vertical, so we'll do W key, up, the S key, down, D, right, so it should be, numbers should be positive. If I go A, it should be negative numbers, going left. All right. Okay, so what about if we want specific keys? You know, if we want to hit specific keys on here. So we can capture that too, to do specific keys also. Okay, so we'll look at that. So in terms of you know, making sure that we will use a method to, you know, basically find specific keys, and we'll need specific key codes to do that. All right, so let's add the following within our script here. All right, so I'm going to hit return a couple times here. All right, so let's type in if again and open and close curly brace. So our input we're looking to capture is a key input. So again, we'll start with input because that's what we want to capture. And we want to tell it to get a specific key. So notice our different options here. We want to select get key. Okay. Now, when we do that, notice what we need is then the key code. So we're going to type in open and close parentheses. When we make sure to type in the close parentheses, then we want to capture the specific key code in here. So key code, and then in this case, let's say that we want the key code for the M key code. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and look for that key code, and then so make sure you're in key code here. For example, I'm going to scroll down to M. There it is. So key code .m. So what should happen is that when I press the letter M, we want it to do something. Okay, so we're just going to tell it to, in this case, we're just going to tell it to display. Now, it could be that you know, want it to fire something, or, you know, lose something, whatever. So let's just go ahead, type our string, what we want it to display on here. The M key is pressed down. Okay. So basically if we press M, this will be displayed. All right, so I'm going to copy that, and we'll type in another letter. Okay, so we'll change that from M to, say, O. Let's see, letter O. Okay, so there we go, key code O. And by the way, if you're, you know, again, if you're not sure, as soon as you start typing in key code, you can scroll down to look for that particular key code. But, you know, it's pretty simple enough, right? So change this to O, uppercase O. All right, let's build it. Make sure there's no errors, no errors. Alrighty, let's switch back to Unity. And let's play it. Make sure I'm clicking in here within my game area. I hit the letter M, notice it displays it. I'm going to hit the letter H or K, L, nothing. This is not, I'm hitting these, pressing down these other keys, nothing is displaying. I'll press on 0, and there it is. Okay. All right, so that's basically, capturing key input, and then, basically that's how you'll set it up in your script. And then basically you want it to do something. You want it to move it or blow it up or whatever, turn on a light or turn off. There's all kinds of things obviously that we can do, right? All right, what about mouse input? Well, it kind of works kind of similar, the same way. And so let's go ahead and for now at least just capture that value, okay, in terms of our mouse input. All right, so let's do that. Okay, so I'll start off with, defining what our value type is going to be. And so mouse value, mouse X value, all right, equals, so it's kind of similar to what we did up there in terms of capturing the left and right input. Here's just we're going to capture the value for the mouse. So we're going to use get axis, and then so open and close parentheses, and we need to use the string that corresponds to our mouse movement, which is mouse X. Again, that you will see. If you forget that, you just go to that dialog box in Unity right here, edit, project settings, input manager, so mouse X, there's our mouse movement, okay? Okay, going back to over here, let's finish this up. We use a semicolon there. We'll go ahead and we're going to basically do the same thing again for our vertical movement. So that's, if we move the mouse left or right. And then, so this is going to be our Y value, up and down. Oops. And then remember, this is going to change from X to Y, Y movement. All right, so so when we run the script, we're still running it within the update method, right? So here's we're within the update method block. This was all for the vertical and horizontal movement. Now this is the mouse vertical and horizontal movement. So we're defining a variable for those values, and then we're just going to do kind of the same thing we did earlier. If just move it there. All right, so if the mouse X value, so if we just move it, left or right, so anything other than 0 value, we want it to print, we want it to display that number. Okay, so semi-closing, so we'll do open and close to parentheses to type in our string or our text. So mouse X value movement is, and then in this case, we need to take the whatever that value and concatenate it. So we'll put that in there. So mouse X value, there we go. And then we'll kind of repeat this all over again to capture the vertical value. Okay, so copy that. And then here, we're going to change this to, obviously you need to change all the X to Y's. Okay. All right. Okay, let's see, let's run it. Or, build it first. And then we'll go ahead and run it. Go back to Unity, make sure my cursor is in the game area. Command P. So my cursor is within the game area. I will move the mouse left or right in this case. Then I'll move it left. Notice the negative number because I moved it left. Now notice when I move it right, there's the positive number. Mouse X, I just moved the left to right. Now I'm going to move it up. And there's, now notice it's saying mouse Y, and there's a positive number. Move it down, mouse Y again, but as a negative number. Okay? All right. So we got our positive and negative numbers. We captured our mouse movements. So, if eventually what we'll do is we'll use, those values to make it do something. Maybe we'll, to move something left, right, up or down, whatever. But it's a number that will eventually, instead of using print, or, right here to display the number, we'll use it to move an object, right? Positive, up, down, and so on. Or rotated, or whatever. Okay, so let's go ahead and now let's look at accessing local components, meaning basically, as you can see right here in Unity, that the main camera, for example, has a bunch of components. Transform, camera, it's a component, player in, the script is a component, audio listener is a component, right? So if we look at directional light, all this right here is a component, this is a component. So we want to be able to capture or be able to access that local component of a particular game object, if it has some type of component in it, okay? All right, so to do that, we'll use the, get component method, all right? Now, you'll notice when we start using it, it's a little different in terms of how the get component method is written. So to start with, let's go ahead and we'll move an object, okay? And we'll go into the component and we'll access that component's object, all right, to start with, directly first. And then we'll look at accessing other objects in terms of, we'll see how we can access other objects. Okay. All right, so let's start with, first let's go ahead and create a cube. So we have our cube there. All right. And by the way, I haven't saved this in a while, so I'm going to go ahead and save this. Notice there's no asterisk there anymore. Okay. All right. So I'm going to create a script for the cube. All right. So again, I'm going to go to create C# script, and then I'll name it cube script. Okay. And then I'll enter we'll enter the code to be able to move this particular object. Okay, this move the cube. So first of all, go ahead and take the script and add it to the cube. All right, so notice we have all these different components. We have a transform component, we have a cube, mesh renderer. So if we wanted, for example, to turn off the mesh renderer, we can access that if we want, or turn off the box, or change the size on the box collider, or and so on. Here we're going to access the transform part of this cube, in terms of being able to access that particular local component. Okay. All right, so let's go into our cube script. So to do that, what we want to do is we want to show movement in here. So what we'll do is we'll start off with transform. Okay, so that's unique in the sense that for this, because it is, when we click on the cube, here's our transform component. Now, you'll see later on that when we want to access other components, we'll need to use get component. But for now, let's just try this out. So transform dot translate, okay, to indicate our movements here. So open and close parentheses. So this is the XY value for translate. So we'll type in point, so 0.05, and floating point. So we just wanted to move on the, remember this is the X, the parameters here need to be XY. We're accessing the XY part of the component of translate. So type in 0. We don't want to access. We don't want anything. We don't want this to move in the Y axis. So we do want it to move in the X axis, and we want it to move. We don't want it to move in the Z axis. So we'll type in 0F again. So F is for the float. And the means float integer, okay, or float number. All right, so type in transform dot rotate. So now we want this to rotate somewhat. Open and close parentheses, semicolon. All right, so oops. So within our parentheses, we don't want it to move on the, we don't want it to rotate on the x-axis. We don't want it to rotate on the y-axis. But we do want it to rotate on the z-axis. Okay, so we want it to rotate by 1. All right, so now we'll do here, now to scale it, we'll type in transform again, because we're accessing that particular component. But this time we want to do local scale, okay? And instead of doing parentheses, we have to tell it we wanted to do to access the vector, 3D vector. So vector 3, and then we'll scale it on the y-axis by 1.5, or x-axis 1.5. Oops, and then make sure we type in F. Same thing, 1.5 F, comma 1.5 F. So Z, X, Y, and Z. So we're going to make it 1.5 times bigger. Okay. All right. So we know that this script has been dropped into the cube. So it should transform the cube, move the cube by, and then remember, this script is being called up 60 times in 1 second. So it's going to move it 0.5, and then it's going to rotate it on the z-axis, and then it's going to make it bigger by 1.5 times, okay, on all the different axes. All right, let's see what happens here. I'll do Command P. Uh-oh, error. Oh, forgot my semicolon here. Notice, by the way, I double-clicked here, and it brought me directly to where the possible error was. Okay, let's do Command B, or build it. Let's try again. And notice it's doing. Okay, so it's moving it to the X, but then it's rotating it, and it made it bigger. To make it more dramatic, maybe let's just make this number, let's say 4, just so we can see a real difference here. And go ahead and save it or build it. So you notice it's much bigger there. Okay. All right. All right. So now, what we want to do is access other objects to kind of manipulate it. Okay. So a lot of times we want to do that to access other objects. So through another particular, and we can put the script, for example, on a camera or a game manager or something like that to manage it, but we want to be able to access other objects like the player or, a tree or car, whatever, but the script will be on another particular object. So for that, we want to use the find method to be able to find that particular object that we're looking for. You can also, for example, use find tag method, which is a little bit better in terms of more specific, because when you do find, it sometimes just looks, well, it's a little slower. It looks through everything, all the objects in your game object there. But for now, let's just go ahead and see how we do this. All right. So we could do, okay, let's go to our cube here, and then I'll remove the script. I'm just going to remove the script altogether. And then you saw what it did when we had it on. I'm going to place it on the main camera here. Okay, so the main camera now, I'm going to go ahead and turn this script off, it'll probably be no problem since we're not inputting anything, but we'll just leave the cube script. So we'll go ahead and run it. Notice the camera is spinning. Okay, it's not the cubes that's spinning, but the camera is doing, moving it, moving all the way around, because we're not targeting the cube here. Okay, so we need to target the cube. So, all right, so let's go back to our script here. Okay, so now what we need to do is define the variable. Okay, so we're going to define a variable. So we're going to give it a name that we want it so we can get access to it. So, and we're going to make it a private variable, meaning it's going to only be used within this script. All right, so game object, and then variable name, we'll give it a variable name of target cube. So, and then semicolon. All right. So now we've defined the variable, and then so now we need to the target, or use that, we'll use this variable name, target cube, and then we want to find it. Okay, game object dot find, and then it needs a parameter, open and close parentheses, and we need the string name of that object, so we know it's named cube. We could rename it, house or whatever, right? But we need to change the name of it within there, and I'll show you where to do that. And and then semicolon there. Okay. Let's do Command B, or build it. And here we go. Let's go back over here. Now remember what happened before. That we're telling it. Well, we put it on the camera, but it wasn't. The script was within the camera. So remember, when we placed it on the camera, the script on the camera, it was the script was on the camera, but it wasn't targeting the cube. So the camera was the one that was moving and not the cube, right? Because the script calls it to move, to transform the camera in the XY rotation and scale value, right? Now, so what we're going to do here is make sure that, again, the script is on there. Okay, so we've targeted here, right? And here's our variable name. So what we need to do now is add that variable name to, targeting those components. So here, right now, it would still target the camera. The camera would still be rotating. So I need to type in target cube, right? So target cube, here's our variable name. So I'm just going to go ahead and copy that. We know we need to put it in front of that so that we can target it. Oops. Copy the whole thing. Just want to copy this. So target cube dot transform, target cube dot transform, local scale, and so on. So, okay, so we're targeting the cube. We're using the variable name, in terms of we were targeting it. We gave it a variable name to target the cube. We've found it, so we specifically found that cube there with the variable name, and now that it's found it, it will hopefully now move the cube because we targeted it that way, because it's targeted now in the script. Okay, so I'm going to do Command B to just to build the script. All right, so let's again. So let's check it out here. We got the main camera, and there's a cube script. But remember, we are targeting the cube. Before, you notice that the camera was spinning all around and not the cube. And okay, and by the way, so here's where we could change the name up here. I could put cube 1, but it wouldn't work that way because it wouldn't find it. So anyway, we'll leave it as cube, and let's see if it works. Command P. And notice the cube is moving and not the camera. And remember, the script is not on the cube, but on the camera, like before. So just so you know, notice right here, if I do change the cube's name, cube 1, right, and I run it, nothing happens. Oops, that didn't change it here. Let's try it again, cube 1. There we go, cube 1. All right, let's try that again. Notice nothing does happen, okay? And even our script saying, hey, You targeted it, but can't find it. All right, so let's get rid of that. Let's run it again. Notice our error goes away and it works. All righty, there you have it. So we've basically we learned how to create a method. We saw how we can capture inputs, the horizontal input, mouse input. We've accessed local components, and specifically, and then we'll look at later on how to get components from from a different object, or within one object to get other components. And we've learned how to work with different game objects. Alrighty.